All right, so today we're diving deep into a question that I think we've all thought about at some point. Like, why do people fall out of love? I mean, it seems like a total mystery sometimes.
Yeah, it really does.
So today we're going to try to unpack some answers. Hopefully, we've got some excerpts here from an interesting piece. It's called Meten yapış Tirolde.
I'm ready to get to the bottom of this. What about you?
Yeah, let's do it. It is a very multifaceted question.
So, I always kind of thought that falling out of love was like how it is in the movies. There's like somebody does something really bad, like a huge betrayal or whatever, and then bam, love is gone. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
But reading this Meten yapış Tirolde thing, it seems like it's not that simple.
It's rarely ever that simple. I think one of the most important things to remember is that falling out of love is very rarely a one-sided thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about blaming one person for the failings of the relationship or saying they're not enough. It's often more about the kind of complex interactions between how people grow and change as individuals.
Okay. How the dynamics of their relationship evolve, and even forces outside the relationship can have an impact on things.
So instead of like one bad guy, it's like a whole bunch of different factors all coming together.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about this individual growth thing, because that was really interesting to me.
So, if you think about it, people are always changing, right? I mean, what you valued 10 years ago may not be as important to you today.
Right.
For example, your goals at the beginning of your career might shift. You might want more of a work-life balance, but then your partner might be like, no, I'm going to climb that corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So even though these are subtle shifts in priorities, they can cause friction as time goes on.
Yeah, so it's not even like huge personality shifts, but it's those tiny little changes in priorities that can lead to you feeling like you're not on the same page anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's almost like you're growing in different directions.
Exactly. And those directions are not always compatible, and that can lead to feeling really emotionally distant, even if you are still physically together.
It makes you realize how important it is to just check in with your partner every now and then, just to make sure that you're still going in the same direction. It's kind of like that saying, right?
Yeah.
That couples need to grow together, not just grow old together.
Yeah.
But let's talk about relationship neglect. How does that come into play with falling out of love?
Well, it's important to remember that relationships, just like anything else that's alive, needs to be nurtured, right?
Right.
So imagine like a plant that's not getting enough water or sun. It's going to wilt.
Yeah.
And a relationship can wilt too if we're not actively nurturing the emotional connection with our partners, making time for communication and sharing the experiences that brought us together.
That makes total sense. So even if there aren't any big blow-ups or huge conflicts, just kind of neglecting that day-to-day connection can also lead to you falling out of love.
Absolutely.
It's almost like you're taking the relationship for granted.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of conflict, that was another big part of this article.
Right.
And I'm curious, because some conflict I think is healthy in a relationship, how do you differentiate between those disagreements that help you grow as a couple and those that are actually eroding the foundation?
That is a very good question. Healthy conflict, I think, is about understanding your partner's perspective and finding some kind of compromise. And through that process, you're actually strengthening the bond,
Right.
An unresolved conflict, on the other hand, is kind of like having a pebble in your shoe.
Ugh, I hate that, yeah.
At first it might not seem like a big deal, but as you keep walking, it's constantly irritating you.
Yeah.
And it's building resentment and blocking you from being close to one another.
Yeah. And that analogy really kind of drives it home. It's so true how those little things can turn into a huge problem if you just don't address them and let them fester. So we've got individual growth, relationship neglect, unresolved conflict. I mean, that's a lot. Is there anything else that can influence whether or not two people stay in love?
Well, you can't forget about external pressures.
Oh, right.
Because we're not just individuals and couples, we also exist in a larger context. Things like stress from work, family issues if you're struggling financially, or even societal expectations can put a lot of strain on a relationship.
I think that's such a good point because it's so easy to forget how much those outside stressors can impact even the best relationships.
Right.
If you're always putting out fires in every other part of your life, it's hard to keep the romance alive.
Exactly. And if you combine all of that, the external pressures, the changes that individuals are going through, the relationship neglect, those unresolved conflicts, it's like the perfect storm for love to fade.
Yeah. It makes you realize that falling out of love isn't just like this sudden thing that happens. It's usually a slow process with lots of different contributing factors. But I mean, that also means that there are things we can do to nurture our relationships and protect that connection, right?
For sure. And that's something I really hope our listeners will think about. What are the things that you can do in your own relationships? How can you be more connected, communicate more openly, address problems as they come up, and create a space that is supportive and loving even when things get hard? Because life does get hard, right?
It really does.
But I think that if you do these things, it can help your love grow even amidst the chaos.
That's a great takeaway.